Welcome to Gambling Flow, your daily deep dive into the fascinating world of gambling. I'm Russell Kane, and today we're diving into a technique that's both intriguing and a bit controversial. It's called edge sorting. Joining me to break down this fascinating strategy is our expert, Fiona Blake.
Hi, everyone. Edge sorting has definitely caused a stir in the gambling world. We'll be looking into what it is, how it works, and why it sparked so much debate.
So Fiona, let's start with the basics. For those who might be new to this term, what exactly is edge sorting?
Okay, so imagine you're playing a card game, like Blackjack or Baccarat at a casino. Now, try to picture yourself being able to identify tiny, almost invisible imperfections on the backs of the playing cards.
Hold on, are you saying that just by spotting these flaws, a player could predict the next card?
You got it. These imperfections, which are usually from slight variations during manufacturing, can actually give clues about the card's value. And believe it or not, research shows that quite a few card decks used in casinos could be vulnerable to edge sorting.
Wow, that's a little unsettling to think about. So how does this work in practice? Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's take a common card back design, the repeating diamond pattern. Many times, these diamond shapes aren't perfectly symmetrical. There might be tiny differences in the size or spacing of the pattern along the edges of the cards. A skilled edge sorter can be trained to see these inconsistencies.
So they're basically looking for patterns in the imperfections, right?
Yeah.
That must take an incredibly sharp eye.
It definitely takes a lot of practice and careful observation. Now, once they can identify those patterns, they can subtly manipulate the deck during the game. For instance, they might ask the dealer to rotate certain cards, saying it's for luck, but they are actually positioning those cards to reveal information about their value.
That's clever, using superstition to hide strategic moves. But how does knowing what card is coming next actually help you win?
Well, think about it. In games like Blackjack and Baccarat, knowing if the next card is high or low can really change your strategy. In Blackjack, you might change your bet or decide whether to hit or stand based on knowing a fizz card is coming next.
That makes sense. You're essentially turning a game of chance into a game of skill. And I'm guessing that knowing the value of those high cards in Baccarat would be even more beneficial.
Absolutely. In Baccarat, high-value cards like 6, 7, 8, and 9 are really important. An edge sorter who can spot those has a big advantage in predicting how the hand will turn out.
Now, I've heard stories about a famous poker player who used edge sorting to win millions. Can you tell us more about that?
You're probably thinking of Phil Ivey, one of the best poker players in the world. He teamed up with a woman named Chung Yin Sun, who was amazing at spotting card imperfections.
Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. So tell us, how did they do it?
Their plan was really audacious. They targeted high-stakes baccarat tables in some of the most prestigious casinos around the world. They would make what seemed like harmless requests to the casino, things like wanting a Mandarin-speaking dealer, using a specific brand of cards, and importantly, using the same deck of cards for several games.
So they got the casinos to break their own rules.
Exactly. And get this, they even asked for an automatic shuffler, which actually ended up helping them with their plan. By making these requests, they were able to set things up perfectly for their edge sorting strategy. During the game, Chung Yin's son would tell the dealer in Mandarin to rotate certain cards. They focused on those high-value cards, creating a subtle pattern that Phil Ivey could recognize.
It's incredible how they used what seemed like innocent requests to manipulate the game to their advantage. And it worked. They actually won millions.
Their edge sorting technique gave them a huge statistical edge in Baccarat. They won over $9 million from one casino and about $12 million from another.
Wow. But I'm guessing the casinos eventually figured it out.
They did. Legal battles followed, and both Ivy and Sun were sued and had to give back their winnings. Although they were never found guilty of any crime, the courts decided their actions were a form of deception. This whole case really highlighted the legal gray area surrounding edge sorting. It's not technically illegal in many places, but courts often see it as unfair play.
So it's this ongoing battle between players trying to gain an advantage and casinos trying to protect themselves.
You could say that. Casinos are always coming up with new ways to prevent edge sorting, like using more symmetrical cards, thoroughly shuffling the decks, and even splitting the deck and shuffling half of it upside down.
It sounds like casinos are really stepping up their game to stay ahead of advantage players. But is edge sorting even possible with all these countermeasures?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one we'll explore further after a quick.
Welcome back to Gambling Flow. It's been really interesting, hasn't it? Exploring the ins and outs of edge sorting. It really has, Fiona. We've talked about how edge sorting works, that constant back and forth between players and casinos. Now I'm thinking, what's next for edge sorting? Will it get even more complex, or will casinos just find a way to make it impossible?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? It's what keeps both players and casinos on their toes. Technology is always changing, giving players new tricks to maybe exploit. We've already seen how some players are using software to analyze card patterns, to spot those tiny variations.
So the digital age is making things even more interesting.
Absolutely. As AI and machine learning get even better, we could see some really advanced edge sorting techniques. Imagine software that can instantly analyze video from casino cameras and tell what the cards are in real time.
That's straight out of a movie, like giving players X-ray vision.
It's a real possibility that casinos know about, and they're spending a lot to stay ahead of the game. Some are trying out RFID chips, tiny chips put right into playing cards. These chips would let them know where every card is in the deck, making edge sorting basically impossible.
So it's this constant innovation battle. Players find new ways to exploit the system, and casinos come up with new technology to shut those loopholes down.
Exactly, and that's what makes gambling so captivating. It's all about risk, about pushing boundaries. But at the end of the day, I think we have to remember that gambling should be about entertainment, right?
Definitely. It's not about getting rich quick or outsmarting the system. It's about having fun, feeling the thrill, and testing your skills.
Whether you play for fun or you're a serious gambler, you have to gamble responsibly. Set your limits, know when to stop, and never gamble more than you can afford to lose.
Good advice. Fiona, I want to thank you for being on Gambling Flow today and sharing your incredible knowledge about edge sorting. It's really eye-opening.
It's been a pleasure. I always enjoyed diving deep into the world of gambling.
Now, before we move on, I'm curious about your thoughts on the ethics of all this. It could be seen as a fair strategy, right? These players aren't actually breaking any rules. They're just using their observation skills.
That's one way to see it. Some might even say it's the casino's fault for not doing enough to stop edge sorting in the first place. But there's also this feeling that it goes against the idea of playing fair.
It's like using a loophole to get ahead, even if it's not technically cheating. It feels a little sneaky, doesn't it?
That's the ethical dilemma with edge sorting. Where do you draw the line between skillful play and taking advantage of flaws that weren't intentional? It's tough. No easy answers.
I bet our listeners are as fascinated by this as I am. This deep dive into the world of edge sorting has been really insightful.
Thanks. It's been great to talk about this with you and our listeners.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the big picture, the impact of edge sorting on casinos in general. Has this technique changed how they do things?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a real wake-up call for them. They've had to rethink their security and put money into new technologies to protect their games. For example, a lot of casinos have upgraded their camera systems using high-definition cameras and fancy software to watch what players are doing at the tables.
So fighting technology with technology.
Exactly. But it's tricky. They want to improve security without making players feel like they're being watched all the time.
Right. They need to keep things fun and welcoming.
It's a constant balancing act, especially as technology keeps getting better. And speaking of technology, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention something else that casinos are trying. It's all about those tiny imperfections that edge sorters look for.
You mean on the card backs?
Yeah, some manufacturers are now using special inks and cutting techniques that make those imperfections even harder to see. They're even using more complex patterns with lots of colors and details to make those edges much less obvious.
That's really interesting. So casinos are working on multiple fronts, from upgrading technology to improving the cards themselves. But I have to ask, are these measures really effective? I mean, won't dedicated players always find a way?
It's definitely a constant arms race. Players will always look for an edge. That's the nature of the game. And with new technologies emerging all the time, who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll see even more sophisticated edge sorting methods develop. It's an ongoing evolution, a constant push and pull between those seeking to exploit the system and those trying to protect it.
And this is exactly what makes the world of gambling so fascinating, isn't it? It's a constant blend of skill, strategy, technology, and of course, a bit of luck. We've covered so much ground today, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. This topic could keep us talking for hours.
You're absolutely right. There's always more to learn and explore in the world of gambling. It's a complex and constantly evolving landscape, and edge sorting is just one piece of the puzzle.
Well, Fiona, I want to thank you again for being our guide on this incredible journey into the world of edge sorting. Your expertise has been invaluable, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot today. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for joining us on Gambling Flow for this deep dive into the world of edge sorting. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did. I'm Russell Kane.
And I'm Fiona Blake.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast, like this episode, and share it with your friends. And until next time, gamble responsibly and good luck at the tables.
So, about those tiny imperfections, some manufacturers are now using special inks and cutting techniques to make those imperfections even harder to see. They're even using more complex patterns, lots of colors and details to make those edges much less obvious.
So casinos are working on multiple fronts, upgrading technology and improving the cards themselves. But are these measures really effective? Won't dedicated players always find a way?
It's definitely a constant arms race. Players will always look for an edge. That's the nature of the game. And with new technologies emerging all the time, who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll see even more sophisticated edge sorting methods develop. It's an ongoing evolution, a constant push and pull between those seeking to exploit the system and those trying to protect it.
And this is exactly what makes the world of gambling so fascinating, isn't it? It's a constant blend of skill, strategy, technology, and of course, a bit of luck. We've covered so much ground today, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. This topic could keep us talking for hours.
You're absolutely right. There's always more to learn and explore in the world of gambling. It's a complex and constantly evolving landscape, and edge sorting is just one piece of the puzzle.
Well, Fiona, I want to thank you again for being our guide on this incredible journey into the world of edge sorting. Your expertise has been invaluable, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot today. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for joining us on Gambling Flow for this deep dive into the world of edge sorting. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did. I'm Russell Kane.
And I'm Fiona Blake.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast, like this episode, and share it with your friends. And until next time, gamble responsibly and good luck at the tables.